1 in 5 suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays. We are Marla and Dave. I am Marla.
And I'm Dave. And once again, we welcome you to another great show. We want to remind you to text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 and support our $1 Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign. He's been a guest before on Mental Health Mondays, and we had a great conversation. We had to have him back. Frank King is a mental health comedian, suicide prevention and postvention public speaker and trainer. He's a writer for was a writer for the Tonight Show for about 20 years. He's a corporate comedian, syndicated humor columnist, podcast personality who was featured on CNN's Business Unusual. The last time he was here, he really helped us change the way we look at suicidal ideation. Today, we'll talk about the warning signs of depression that could lead to thoughts of suicide, suicidal ideation, and what we should do when we notice these signs. He's the expert, and we can't wait to get straight to the conversation.
Super excited. I'm super excited because Frank King has been the only one who's come on as a guest and roasted you about your Rose Bowl wear.
I have to do something about that. I have to figure out how I'm going to get Frank back.
You wore your magic carpet, and he called you on it.
My PTSD about sitting in the front row with the comedian just came all the way right back from when you used to do comedy as well. When we come back, I'll get my thick skin on, and we have a great conversation.
Looking forward to it.
A great conversation with Frank King. Don't move.
When Dave and Marla get together, it's hot.
Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley believe it doesn't take much to make life a little better for our neighbors, coworkers, friends, our family members, even our children who suffer with mental illness. When you support our $1 Today Keeps the Stigma Away campaign, you are doing your part to erase the stigma surrounding mental illness. For just $1 today, or $1 a day for 1 week, just $7, we can look forward to a future that does not include the unfortunate and uncomfortable stares, bullying, and the subsequent isolation that our loved ones who suffer with brain differences deal with. Text the word GIVE, that's G-I-V-E, to 818-698-1021 to donate. $1 Today Keeps the Stigma Away. Brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave and NAMI San Fernando Valley.
I have to admit, Frank, I was very much looking forward to having another conversation with you. When our last conversation, you literally just opened my mind up to. It seemed just, it was so simple, but at the same time, it was quite a twist that I never would have imagined, and I was intrigued.
Well, first, Frank, welcome to the show. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
And I think what Marla is actually saying is, for such a heavy and weighty topic, the way you approached it so matter-of-factly was a little off-putting on one hand, but, I
wasn't off-put at all.
Something nicer than we expected, if
I
that
was
makes any
enlightened
sense.
immediatly. I was like, oh, this is enlightening.
Well, there are people who find it a little blunt and off-putting. It's, but you know what? We're talking about life and death, so why beat around the bush?
Yeah,
it is black and white.
Well,
there you go.
The last time, I think the takeaway that I really took from the last time you were on the show was that you really just changed the paradigm in the way that you looked at suicidal ideation and thoughts of suicide. For those that, I'm not trying to use big words, but and by saying, instead of looking at it as a deficit, it became your superpower.
Yep.
Remind us, catch us back up with that frame of reference.
Yes, I did a TED Talk, my third one, called Mental with Benefits, the Evolutionary Advantages of Mental Illness.
Yeah.
I kept bumping into people with mental illness who had some other extraordinary ability, and I thought, this cannot be. a coincidence.
Wow.
And I do believe, because of my chronic suicidality, the fact that I'm willing to kill myself at any moment allows me to live on, because I believe suicide's mostly about pain, and I can stand a great deal more pain knowing I can make the pain stop at any point.
There you
I
go.
love that.
Once again,
I love that. So I guess today we're going to really talk about noticing the signs of when somebody might be heading down that path, or that might be carrying a little bit more weight. So why don't you just take it away? And so why don't you start off with the difference between suicidal
I was going to ask
ideation
that, and depression.
and depression? Or
Well,
are they the
depression-
same thing, or do they go together?
No, they're not the same thing.
Okay.
And I've met a young woman who had suicidal ideation, was never depressed. She said, "Do I have to have depression to have suicidal ideation?" I said, "I don't think so." Depression is, though, oftentimes the cause of a suicide, most often the cause of a suicide. But for me, and I guess a lot of people like, the major depressive disorder and suicidality are two entirely different entities.
Yeah.
And there's no medication, as far as I know, for chronic suicidal ideation. There are a great deal of number of medications for depression. And here's the good news, guys. 8 out of 10 people who are suicidal are ambivalent. 9 out of 10 give hints in the last week leading up to an attempt, which means the vast majority of people can be saved. The vast majority of people want to be saved. And the way we save them is doing something as simple as what we're doing right here, and that is starting the conversation. If you know how to spot the signs and symptoms of depression and thoughts of suicide. Depression, I would say top 3 symptoms to my mind are: 1, they have trouble getting out of bed in the morning, often late to work or school, but rally in the afternoon, almost like a different person. 2, they either eat too much or they cannot eat. They either sleep too much or they cannot sleep. And 3, and this is one you could actually spot on Zoom, they begin to let their personal hygiene go. Normally, when you see them, they're pretty well put together. But this day, their hair's kind of dirty, clothes aren't quite so clean. It may be because they're having difficulty getting out of bed in the morning, run a little wash, and take a shower. Now, the question comes up oftentimes, what do you say to somebody who's depressed? Well, let's start with what you don't say.
Right.
There you go.
You don't say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, turn that frown upside down.
Yeah.
Personal favorite, have you tried fish oil?
Wait. Go back. What was the personal favorite?
Have you tried fish oil?
Or any other supplement that might be the supplement du jour for the day? I get it.
Yes, or you need to choose joy.
Yeah.
Well, unless you're talking about dishwashing liquid, I think I'm out of luck. What do you say? You say, I'm here for you, and you mean it. I know you're not lazy, crazy, or self-absorbed. I know that depression is a mental illness. The good news is, with time and treatment, things will get better. And I'll take the time to help you get the treatment. And here's the hard part. You have to ask them point blank, are you having thoughts of suicide?
Right.
And if you can't ask that, you find somebody who can. And every keynote that I do, I give out my cell number. And I say, look, if you can't find somebody to ask that question, call me and I'll ask them. Now, let's say the person is not forthcoming about their thoughts of suicide, but your intuition says you believe they are thinking of suicide. And I always say, go with your gut, go with your intuition. How would you know? Well, there are signs and symptoms. They talk about death and dying. Death and dying, you catch them Googling it. Death and dying appears as a theme in their artwork or their music or their writing. They're gathering the means to die by suicide, whether it's buying a firearm or stockpiling medication. They are getting their affairs in order, especially if they're giving away prized possessions.
I was going to name that one.
Yeah, because that means they want the items to go to the people they want them to go to when they're gone.
Right.
Here's a counterintuitive one I think is very dangerous. They've been depressed forever, and then all of a sudden, they're happy for no apparent reason. And you're happy because they're happy. The problem is they may be happy because they've chosen time, place, and method, and they know the pain is coming to an end.
Freedom.
Now, Frank, can I just put a pin in that right quick? Because I've heard that usually you have a lot more time to deal with the situation when they don't have specifics of how they're going to actually end it. Is that true?
Yes, and I'll address that momentarily.
Okay.
what do you say to somebody you believe is having thoughts of suicide? You don't say you're just looking for attention. You're being melodramatic. Nobody who talks about it ever does it.
Yeah.
What you do say is, do you have a plan? And if they have a plan, what is your plan? And if it's detailed to time, place, and method, you need to do your best to get them to a mental health facility immediately. Worst case, get them on the phone with the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Or if they're younger, millennial, Gen Z, get them texting to the Suicide Prevention text line. Text the word help to 741-741. Now, to your question.
741-741.
741-741. Text help or connect or anything to that number. To your question, Dave, and this is not the literature. This is something I came up with on my own. Let's say they are having thoughts of suicide, but the plan isn't really well formed. It's not specific time, place, method. What do you do? And I couldn't find anything in the literature about what you do at this point. So my idea was, you say to them, well, tell me, are you going to kill yourself? And if they say no, then you say, okay, tell me why not. Make them give voice to whatever's keeping them here, because something is keeping them here.
So you want to clue in on that anchor, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah, it's called a turning point. If you can get them to tell you why they're still here, you can use that as a turning point. I took a class, ASSIST, A-S-I-S-T, Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. They talk about it as a turning point. If you can get them to tell you why they're still here, you can use that. And what you say at that point is, would it be okay if you and I created a plan to keep you safe just for today?
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
This is, yeah.
And the reason why I love that is, as usual, Frank, like you usually do, you take one perspective and turn it completely around. So instead of trying to attack the reasons why you're contemplating suicide, you then just really
highlight the reason why,
dig into and you dive right into the reason why they might want to stay here.
Why are they still
and
here?
why they don't want to do it.
Yeah, why
and
they're
then
still
you
here.
just kind of
Why
dive
are you
in
here?
right there. I love that.
Yep. They're
I
still here
love
for
that.
a reason. And here's the thing. People ask me about they asked me that question after my keynote.
Yeah.
And I do have a really good reason why I have not done myself in yet, and I'll share that with you.
Yeah, when we come back, I'm looking. I really would like to hear that, for sure, because I know that you'll be blunt and to the point.
To a point of pain.
To a point of pain. We'll be right back with more Frank King. Can't wait.
Absolutely.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
Dissociative disorders are characterized by an involuntary escape from reality, more specifically, a disconnection between thoughts, identity, consciousness, and memory. Almost half of adults in the United States experience at least one depersonalization / derealization episode in their lives, with only 2% meeting the full criteria for chronic episodes, with women being more likely than men to be diagnosed.
Symptoms and signs of dissociative disorders include: 1 is a significant memory loss of specific times, people, and events. 2, out-of-body experiences, such as feeling as though that you're watching a movie of yourself. 3, mental health problems such as depression, anxiety, and thoughts of suicide. 4, a sense of detachment from your emotions or your emotional numbness. 5, a lack of a sense of self-identity.
There are 3 types of dissociative disorders defined by the DSM, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and they are, the first one is dissociative amnesia. The second one is depersonalization. The third one is dissociative identity.
If you or someone that you know or are currently experiencing any of these symptoms, please contact a mental health professional immediately. And remember, you are not alone.
Brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
I never do anything without thinking about it first. Marla is a feeler.
I basically live my personality on my sleeve.
But when Marla and Dave get together,
It's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
All right, Frank, you're about to. Oh, go ahead, Marla.
Let me ask you, Frank, why are you still here?
Well, my mom and dad met in high school back in the late 1930s, got married in the 40s, and both wanted to start a family. So my mother had a difficult time getting pregnant, but she did. She carried it for 9 months, and shortly after it was born, it passed away. A year later, she got pregnant again. She carried it to term, 9 months, and shortly after birth, it passed away. Where she found the courage to try a third time, and I was born a fourth time, my sister was born, I have no idea.
Wow.
Yes. So I believe that she was so brave and worked so hard to bring me here that I have to be at least as brave and work at least as hard
To stay.
until my appointed time.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
good motivation right there. I think that's really good motivation. So, and I've heard in the past that they say that fear is not really a great motivator, but love is really the best motivator. So it sounds like that motivation is really couched in love.
I have a question, Frank. I would like to ask you a direct question. In your suicide ideation, do you think about the pain of the people that you may leave behind, your family,
An interesting question in that there's something in suicidality called burdensomeness. It's one of the three legs of the three-legged stool of suicidality. Burdensomeness, and most people who take their lives by suicide suffer from burdensomeness, meaning they believe the world would be better off without them. So in fact, when people say it's selfish from the outside looking in, but from the inside looking out,
you're doing somebody a favor.
Yes, and I had $1 million life insurance policy, and we just filed bankruptcy. So my wife would have been brokenhearted, but she'd no longer be broke had I killed myself. Yeah, so I was thinking about it.
Wow. It's not again. I mean, he just naturally flips it to another.
That's his thing.
And it's crazy because I also feel like, oh my
I'm
goodness.
trying to learn how to do that myself.
No, I'm
It's
actually
amazing.
sitting here thinking, oh, Marla, you're laughing. It should. But it's funny the way that he puts that.
So you know what? One of the things that you also say, Frank, is how to spot thoughts of depression. And how can you tell what somebody's thinking?
Well, like I said, giving away prized possessions, getting there. Yes. So you really can't read their mind.
Right.
What you're looking for, Dave, is a pattern.
Okay.
Are they talking about it? Are they Googling it? Are they giving away prized possessions? That's what I teach when I keynote is they call it gatekeeper training. You're sort of standing at the gate for all your friends, family, and coworkers, watching them come and go and looking for signs and symptoms.
Okay. So when you say one of the points that you made is, would it be okay once you covered the fact that let's find that turning point where we figure out what it is that's keeping them here, what resource is your favorite resource to point people to?
I would drive them, if I could, to a local mental health facility. Here in town, it's called the Johnson Unit.
Mm-hmm.
It's in one of the hospitals, and ask them to be evaluated, and if necessary, I suppose a judge can impose a mandatory 3-day hold, 72 hours.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also check yourself in.
Right. Voluntarily check yourself in for a 5150. Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, man, every time you speak with us, you sort of, like Marla said, give us a better way of looking at things. So now if I were to actually approach one of my friends who was dealing with sort of a suicidality, as you say it, thoughts of suicide, when you say, if I can get you some help, there's so much stigma around mental illness and mental health in general. Is that something that you say, let me take you for that type of of help versus just say, let me take you to a place, and it just turns out to be a mental health to a hospital. In other words, the reason why I say that is because how can we do it in such a way that they don't feel tricked? Because what I've noticed is there have been times when I try to sort of manipulate somebody into getting help. They push back from the manipulation more than just saying, this is actually where I think you need to go, and this is where I'm going to take you.
Yeah, I would say, look, let's go. Let's visit the Johnson unit, and which is terrifying to most people in this area. Simply for an evaluation. Let's find out why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Is it depression? Is it schizoaffective disorder? Is it the depressive stage of bipolar disease? I mean, what is, and I also recommend that people get a physical, because sometimes physical ailments manifest as mental illness symptoms. So maybe there's something going on metabolically that is the problem. Like I had a friend in town who was terribly depressed, and he had a physical, and turned out his body was not able to metabolize iron.
Wow.
And on a slow iron supplement, all of a sudden,
he was fine.
Fine.
Awesome. Well, you know what? My question is, it like Dave said, there's such a stigma. Is there a wrong time at any point of this discovery to actually say to somebody, hey, is this an issue for you?
No, I don't think so. If your intuition tells you, or they tell you they're having thoughts of suicide, they're more likely to live on if you ask them flat out, because 8 out of 10 people are ambivalent, and 9 out of 10 give hints and hope somebody will notice. So the odds are in your favor that when you ask them, are you having thoughts of suicide, that if they're, if they're in the 8 out of 10 that are ambivalent, or they're in the 9 out of 10 that give hints, chances are they'll appreciate, they may, better than being dragged in front of a judge and locked down for 72 hours.
I just see everything as a spectrum, and my brain is asking me now, at what point on this spectrum does it get to be critical? Like, is it, are there any symptoms that are worse than the others, or is there a conversation that is created that's more urgent than the next?
Well, I think Frank already mentioned that if they have a date, definite plan.
We get that, but I'm just saying, like, early on, like, there are times, I could say there are times that I've had thoughts, in that direction, but you kind of, you're overwhelmed and you feel like that, and then you come out. So at that moment, you know what I'm saying? I don't know what that threshold would be to begin to approach it.
I think what Dave's saying is, if they've got time, place, and method figured out,
right,
that's the point at which that's the point of crisis. And by the way, chronic suicidal ideation is not in the DSM. And I met a clinician, a psychotherapist the other day, 20 years he'd been in the business, and his brother had told him about me and about chronic suicidal ideation. He said, Frank, I've never even heard of it. I didn't know it. So now, looking back at my patients over the years, I now realize that some of the things they told me would indicate they probably have. Well, and since you and I have gotten together last time, I was in Cincinnati, did a keynote for a big construction company. And this happens very often. A young man, African-American, came up afterwards, mid-20s, crying in front of 180 other construction workers, and he couldn't speak. So I gave him, time, and he gathered himself, and he had lost 3 people close to him in the last year, all to violence, including his daughter, who died in his arms.
Wow.
And he's never mentioned this to anybody he works with or anybody else. And he said, I can't sleep. I haven't slept for 2 days, and I work on the 5th floor of this building, and I think about jumping off every day.
Wow. Well, then that's
so time, place, method. So I got the HR guy over, and I said, look, you need to take this gentleman by the hand to a mental health facility and get him evaluated and perhaps medicated, because he is circling the drain.
Okay. Well, the last time you were here, you told us about turning things into a superpower, and you just proved once again that you're a superhero. We'll be right back with more of our conversation with Frank King. Hey, it's time that, as the music indicates, for the poll question. Marla is...
I'm a bobblehead.
She's about to pole dance.
No, I'm a bobblehead now.
She's as if a bobblehead was placed in front of a pole and was asked to do
That's
a
a
pole
lot.
dance.
That's a lot. Let's just get to the poll
I'm just trying to paint the picture.
This is a lot.
Marla, what was the question last week?
Last week we asked what percentage of state prisoners have a recent history of mental health condition? 11%, 17%, or 31%?
Our guest last week was John Bowie, so
And
I think he might have
guessed
got it
appropriately.
correctly.
He
Yes,
did.
he guessed 30. I
We're supposed
forgot to ask Frank what he thought it was.
31%.
Well, here's a trick question for you, Frank. Because of the pandemic, that number has been updated to 31%. What did it used to be?
26.
Ooh,
Oh,
that's really
wow.
close. It used to be 24%. So, wow, you're right on top of it. All right, here's the new question for this week.
One more reason, Frank, for you to stay. You're very smart.
And this is going to kind of tie into something that you said earlier in the show, Frank. If your diet regularly includes highly processed foods, fried and sugary food or drink, how much higher is your risk for developing depression? 35%, 48%, or 60%? If your diet is full of processed foods, fried, sugary foods or drinks, how much higher is your chance for developing depression? 35, 48, or 60%?
48.
All right,
Well,
so you will have to tune in next week
to find out.
You know the drill.
If you're
You know the drill, Frank.
you're the
This is
genius
not your first time.
that you have proven to be in the past, Frank King.
And you guys remember to text the word GIVE to 818-698, excuse me, 1021. Little brain fart right there. And
heard
we'll
it
be
too.
right back.
All right, we have a question actually in our chat room on YouTube, and someone is asking, do you think that everyone should have a checkup in the aspect?
That's a good point.
A mental health checkup, or
Yes.
Yeah, like you go to your doctor for your regular yearly
Once you're in, right.
checkup.
Should you,
Well, the doctor is supposed to ask you two gateway questions every time you see them. One is, have you felt hopeless in the last 2 weeks? I think the second one is, are you taking less interest in social activities you used to really enjoy? And if you answer yes to either one of those, there's 7 follow-up questions. Although my doctor never asked me any of those.
I wonder why, Frank.
Well, he's in a waiting room full of people, and probably didn't want to know the answer. I think the doctor should ask you about your mental health. I think a dentist should ask you about your mental health. Any dentists now consider themselves non-physician primary care providers. And so I think they will eventually be asking those questions as well.
I have to admit, the last time I went to the gynecologist, I got asked those questions. Seriously.
Oh, good.
I'm not even kidding.
I was waiting for
David,
the
don't. No, Dave, you don't.
You
need
almost
to know.
had me there.
No, you're not my gynecologist. I know what you're thinking. It's not true.
So, Frank, before we get to your final word for us today, your best advice, let's go back to one of your bucket list. I think, did you mention before that you were trying to be a bodybuilder?
No, he's competing.
Oh yeah, I've got another contest coming up July 30th. Now I'm 65, so it's for people who are 65 and older. I waited till I was 60 because I figured by that time pretty much every guy had given up, and I was right. I tell you guys,
you just waited them out.
Yeah, I got second in one of the,
Frank, it's not fair if you're the only one standing. I just.
Well, there were 2 of us. I got second. I said to the guy backstage, "Hey man, I've heard from a reliable source. I think we're going to be first and second. I don't know."
Hilarious.
The good news is we can't go lower than second place.
No, as a matter of fact, the contest I'm doing this June 3rd, July 30. There's one other guy above the age of 60. He's 90, and if I don't go to compete, then you won't have anybody to compete with. So, what I'm terrified of is that he'll beat 90.
Now, from what I know about bodybuilding, they're all kind of different. Oh wow! There you
nice.
go.
Look at you.
There you go.
Okay, Frank.
I'm gonna get a screenshot and put my head on that body.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Frank Six-Pack King.
That's right.
That's actually impressive.
So, Frank, give us your best advice when you are in position to be able to notice that someone might be heading toward thoughts of suicide.
If you see something, say something. If your intuition tells you that they're depressed or perhaps having thoughts of suicide, you need to speak up, because in the mental health business, silence kills.
And there you have it. Once again, our superhero when it comes to suicidal ideation. Frank King has spoken.
Always enlightening, and it's a pleasure to have you here. I'm going to try to follow you online.
Well, Frank, where's that
for your
bodybuilding contest going to be?
That's what I mean. I already follow, but for the bodybuilding.
Yeah, it's in Eugene, Oregon, and it is what's called a true natural. They polygraph you before.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And urine test you afterwards. Make sure you're not juicing.
Wow. Well, there you go.
Not even celery juice?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Frank, once again, man, you're amazing. Thank you so much. Good luck on that bodybuilding contest.
And keep sharing and changing lives. We need your voice always.
And you guys.
Absolutely.
And same.
Thank
And
you
tune
very
in
much,
next
man.
week to see if you're still the genius that I've pegged you.
All right, buddy. See you next time. And see
Thank
you
you.
guys next week.